Mm. So hello and welcome back to part 4, continuing my explanation using the healthcare system and relating it to proposed socialism for North America. So essentially what is happening in the American healthcare system is that as an industry, healthcare costs almost 18% of our GDP, which that's a lot. And actually, as a matter of fact, it's the highest in the world. And additionally, two on a side note, it's considerably higher than even the second closest nation. It's set apart. So it's kind of not good. Anyway, so that second closest nation, by the way, is Switzerland. Just so you guys are aware. So anyway, I don't want to get too far into this, but obviously there's I guess there's certain I almost would say bickering back and forth, so to speak, as to why the healthcare system is costing this 17, almost 18% of GDP. And basically it kind of boils down to certain different arguments that basically try to propose the reasons why the system overall is not operating sustainably. But I think when a system overall is not operating sustainably, then there's a lot of things. But anyway, I had to just, I guess, throw that in there because that's definitely a factor in their with them considering moving towards socialism, is the people seeing that the system costs so much and that people feel like they're uninsured and that things are not working for some people the way they want it to. So they're still, it's almost like they're still kind of working out reasoning, but I get okay. So again, so I just broke off so that people are aware of that, but I'm not going to get any further into that argument in this video because for me, I think it's a waste of my time, and it's a waste of you guys' time too. And I'm not here to waste you guys' time. So, moving forward, even additionally, for the sake of this explanation, the reasoning why it's so high, and hopefully we can move past it and move towards a system that is actually sustainable. But regardless, the reasoning of why it's irrelevant because the implications would be the same regardless of the reasoning. So anyway, moving past that, the situation is this. The healthcare system has already begun the process of taking away from other squares. And in the current market, these other squares have resorted to protecting their own existence, so to speak, by cutting off what they supply to the healthcare square. So I realize it's kind of an abstract example, so let me kind of maybe put some real life context to that. So in other words, medication prices have become so high. The cost of needing to have continuous care has become so high that the other squares have started to say things like we're no longer providing health insurance to certain types of employees. As that square, they are cutting off the supply to the healthcare square by doing that. Or for instance, they can say we're going to hire people in a mass scale out of temp agencies so that we ourselves don't even have to pay for the access to that square. They just put it on another entity. I guess another example would be even worse, in the business sector, some businesses say they're not even going to expand their business to a certain point, past a certain point. And I point that out too because it's anytime a business, there's actually a rule, anytime you have more than 50 full-time employees, then you have to provide health insurance to all full-time employees that work there. So if you're a business and you're starting to grow, but you're considering what kind of costs you can take on in terms of your little part of your square or whatever, some businesses, that may be a reason why they don't expand, because they don't want to take on that extra cost. So anyway, so that's examples of how these other squares are kind of they have resources and participation. They're trying to naturally come up with mechanisms to not give up their resources to the point to where they lose their ground, so to speak, in terms of their purpose and their functioning. But anyway, so what socialism aims to do is force the other squares, so to speak, to give up and pay the amount that they've been withholding through these mechanisms of natural denying people access to the healthcare square. So if they make healthcare universal, then all the people who either could not afford it previously or who are not even on it previously, would have to be paid for by the collective, or in other words, taxpayer universal health care. So assuming that the healthcare square like continues its type of consumption habits that I kind of spoke to before but didn't elaborate on, whatever those habits or reasonings may be, this already like unsustainable, like almost 18% of our GDP, with the addition of more participants, would like become even greater. Like imagine if it was like 30 or like 50% of GDP, like like we wouldn't even like go to work anymore, like go to the beach, or like go to the movies, or like you're like do anything, like the only economic activity we'd have like in the economy would be like going to the doctor's office and like talking to the insurance company. So it'd be pretty ridiculous. But anyway, I guess like I'm kidding on that point, like, and I hate to say it, but I'm kidding because like the economy would fail, so to speak, like long before the situation obviously became to that level. So we're already kind of at like a max spectrum level, like the way I look at it, at 17-18%. Like that's way higher than a lot of other nations. So in my opinion, so that brings me to the key takeaway here. Then one of the key takeaways. And that's that socialism in America it's not unrealistic. Because people against it, they argue, well, it's unrealistic, like we can't pay for it. And the thing is, like, it's not like that is. It's like but it's not unrealistic because of the fact that like some like rich people are gonna have to like pay for other people, like poor people, like the reason why it's unrealistic is because if the system itself is operating unsustainably, and we're forced to pay for that as a collective. Then collectively our system will become unsustainable. So that's very important. So let me just like repeat that. If the system is operating unsustainably, and we're forced to pay for that as a collective, then collectively our system will become unsustainable. So to kind of, I guess, maybe bring this in and throw into, maybe kind of paint a little better picture. Hopefully you guys are following that point. But I want to say too, like when it comes to the squares, like one thing you want like in terms of competition, like you want members of like the same industry or the same square, so to speak, to like compete with each other. Like for instance, like you want Burger King to compete with McDonald's, or you want like Foodland to compete with Safeway or something. But like but in terms of like all these squares are rows of essential essential needs society. So like you don't want like your need in one square, so to speak, to be like competing with your need in another square. Like for instance, like you don't want to have a trade away your needs in your food square for like the price of your medications. And that's what happens when a square is operating unsustainably, and its expansion is past the spectrum levels. So I don't know. So a little happy thought, like really the only way to provide quality healthcare to everyone is to operate in spectrum levels of optimal supply and demand. Like that's, I mean, if that's the goal, like if that's what people want, like that's pretty much the way I look at it is kind of like the only way to do it. And what I mean by that is like, like the only way to provide anything necessary in society, given the parameters, is to operate within spectrum levels. And as you like probably understand now, like our spectrum, in other words, is like our sustainable profit margin, so to speak, is the same no matter how we divide it up. So like additionally, like the amount of money you can make out of this. So like additionally, like the amount of money you can make out of the system without causing it to bust, given the finite ball of glue and the resources and everything, is like ultimately it's pretty much kind of the same. Like yeah, of course you can keep expanding, but at a certain point it's kind of if we want to live in this ball of glue with all the squares operating and meeting everybody's need, then at a certain point there's a spectrum and it's going to bust if you go too far on it. So basically my point with that is that whether you have like a lopsided version of haves and have-nots in the system, or if you spread it fairly and administer it optimally across everyone in the spectrum, like the spectrum's the same. So like you might as well do it right. So anyway, so even to go further elaborate on to revisit systems, because obviously I'm talking about socialism here, but I want to kind of put it in the context of all the systems. Like like in a perfect world, like if things are operating sustainably, like you could use any system in theory, you know, like you could use even the dreaded like communism, like you could, that could be your structural framework that you operate sustainably within, as long as that's how you agree to do it. Or again, like you could use socialism if it was sustainable. You could use capitalism and make it sustainable. You know, people could argue whether it is or not, but I mean, whenever there's a thing where people are like, oh, we don't have health care, or it costs too much, then arguably that's not sustainable for reasons. You know, it's like shit. You could come up with anything, dude. Like you could use like the friggin' ice cream. You use the ice cream sandwich system, dude. Like as long as it operates sustainably. Okay, so I mean that's kind of outside of the box, but I guess I'm just pointing out that whatever the denomination of the framework you're using, you can just as long as you operate in spectrum levels and optimal levels, you can just pick one. So okay, so kind of, so I guess to wrap things up, like economics aside, remember again that the reason why we even study resource allocation at all is because we as human beings are all involuntary participants in this true God-given free market circumstance, so to speak. Like again, I kind of went over that, like we're just all here and we have a certain amount of crap to work with, so that's our circumstance, and like we don't make the rules of that circumstance, unfortunately. So you know, God does, or whatever you believe in as a creator. So I guess like I don't know. So I guess maybe a key takeaway there to kind of summarize that is like when it comes to resource allocation, you might as well just do it right, because you're not going to be able to cheat anyway. And that's just my theory. I could be wrong. Alright, so anyway, that's another edition of the Millennial Minute. I thank you guys for watching. Coming right at you guys with all the important topics, and of course, they're being broken down economically for your convenience, or for your nerdiness, however you guys view it. Hopefully it was convenient. Additionally, I'm posting the official definition of GDP in the comments. You guys probably saw in other videos that part 1 and part 2 that I've already posted, but it'll be on there for every video, so you can see that. Alright, anyway, I guess that's laters for now, and I'll hopefully see you guys soon for more videos. Thank you.